So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our first Lunch and Learn series hosted by the Department of Teaching and Learning here at Tennessee State University. My name is Dr. Nicole Arrighi, and I am a professor in the department that also serves as the EdTech coordinator. In addition to that, I serve as one of the trainers for Nearpod as one of their pioneers. I think that's what they call it. I'm excited to show this to you, the software to you, because I've been using Nearpod pre-pandemic. And I think that's an important context to set because once we had to shift into the COVID environment, one of the things that has said a lot about recruitment and retention, not just at TSU, but higher ed institutions and probably the education profession far and wide, is the educator's ability to adapt and still provide an engaging and dynamic learning environment for their students while we're trying to navigate hybrid online situations. So this series today is centered around not just learning and introducing you to Nearpod as a software feature, but also maintaining the level of engagement that you would want to see from your students in your various content areas. So the first thing that is not a Nearpod feature, but is something that I do with my students to kind of set the tone, is having just a PowerPoint. In this case, I'm using a keynote slide to just establish classroom norms. Any preliminary reading assignments, if I need them to access a certain link to set the stage in maybe eLearn, I have all that on their screen. Things like, do you expect your students to have their cameras on or off during your class session? In the beginning of our pandemic experience, we know that Zoom, I don't think was ready for everyone to be online, so broadband was an issue. But if you know, for example, public speaking, that a camera is going to be an essential part of the instructional experience, I think it's really essential to have that class norm established up front. And also just building a relationship so that as an instructor, I can still associate a name to a face versus just a black rectangle with a name on it. Also extending greetings, just to let people know that you are alive and not a robot. Again, building those classroom dynamics, but most importantly, setting your microphones to mute in the event that you have life happening behind you, that your private conversations stay private and also don't disrupt from the learning experience. So again, that's just a simple classroom norm that I have in place. And even down at the bottom, when I log into my class early, I just have a simple YouTube timer on the screen just to do a countdown that I use during breaks and whatever, just so I don't have to talk as much when there's downtime in the class. And then it builds that kind of beginning of the class, just chill environment before we actually start. This session is being recorded, so not to say be on your best behavior, but hopefully we can get through things smoothly without any tech glitches. More importantly, so that as things are settling in and as you explore on your own time, you have access to this video recording to make it make sense for you again. And of course, I will provide all of you with my contact information. Actually, you should have received it in the email so that if you want to reach out and connect afterwards and kind of have some discussions, or even use me as a play Nearpod student so that you don't look crazy when you're doing a live launch, I'm more than willing to facilitate that for you. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and copy this statement here and post it in the chat area. That way, as we're going on, if we have any new visitors that pop in, if you would not mind doing me, sorry, Yulik, I posted that to you privately, but I'm gonna go to everyone. That way, if anyone joins afterwards, we can share that Nearpod code with them. And I'm going to share my screen. So first foremost, when I share my screen, you are going to see my screen as the teacher. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to start off with this so that you can see what I see as the Nearpod educator, but on your screen, you are looking at my lecture as a student. So on my end, one of the things that Nearpod offers you, in addition to Zoom, and I have all my Zoom rectangles, but of course, if I'm not in gallery view and I'm sharing my content, I can't see new individuals after about 4 or 5 rectangles. So at the bottom on my screen, I have this green avatar indicator that allows me to see who's in my live Nearpod session. So that's really interesting and a really awesome feature that Nearpod offers you, because Nearpod does what's considered in a participation percentage. So as we're going through the content, it's showing me that Alexis, Josh, I might pronounce this incorrectly, so please forgive me. Is it Parlaria? If not,
Poliala.
thank you so much. And then I've logged in myself, and then someone's logged in as TSU. But it gives me a green indicator to say these are students that are active in my session. Now, active is vague. It just basically means that they have a live device in my Nearpod session. So a couple of ground rules here. First class session, I have them put in their name and their T numbers, because those are kind of essential things that we want to gather as a teacher. Sometimes if they're in groups or you have them in cohorts, you may have them add a name and a cohort, or a name and a campus. You can decide that, but I just kind of have them just put their name and I leave the other field blank. But again, you have that option just to do a secondary attendance. So students will say, well, I was in Zoom, but I now have them logged into Nearpod as well. So that is also a secondary check and balance to make sure that they have the content. I can also post my Nearpod lesson in eLearn, so that, and I typically have it locked so that when, like 5 minutes before my actual class session, I will have the link up so that they can just go directly to the link and I don't have to post a Nearpod code. And that's been really helpful for a lot of our student athletes, individuals that are in the band, because they can just go directly into eLearn as they're traveling and access this. One quick note before we actually get started as well, as presenters, as we're building our scholarship, Nearpod has been a really useful tool for me, because I can have my presentation already uploaded in Nearpod when I'm doing a conference. And then I actually activate my Nearpod presentation from my phone. And that way I have a student station, which is the main screen for my audience. And I can walk around the conference area and change my slides and everything. I don't have to stand behind a podium, which is really nice if that's the kind of presenter that you are. It also helps to make sure that I don't have to carry multiple devices or worry about if they have a Mac or a PC. It's just already, it's on the internet. So life is good there. So I know you're here because you had these wonderful, wonderful Leave It to Beaver students who were just like, I don't care about the pandemic. I'm just going to keep going with the flow. I've purchased my book. I'm going to still get all dressed up from head to toe and have the perfect learning environment, perfect Zoom background to engage. And I have my selfie lights and everything. Surely no one in your class is doing your class from their bathtub, or while they're mowing the lawn, or grocery shopping, or heaven forbid, in one of my students' cases, they were cooking and they were always jumping up like, I got to go flip something. I got to go base something. Like, are you cooking during my class? These are not the realities that we were faced with when we were trained and we're thinking about all of these different pedagogies. John Dewey would be shocked and appalled and clutching his pearls if he thought about teaching during a pandemic. But alas, here we are. So from a student standpoint, the first thing that Nearpod offers them is the ability to capture your content in real time. So on your screen, in the top right-hand corner, you should have like a notes icon that allows you on your Nearpod screen to take the notes. On my screen, I have to actually hit like a little drop-down arrow. I'm on a second device on my iPad. So I have like a little drop-down triangle that allows me to take notes. And that notes, I can send them to my email, I can send them to OneDrive or Google Drive. But as soon as my lesson ends, all the notes that I've taken per slide are captured and submitted to me. So that's a really great way to give your students some additional support, because again, everything sounds great when they're in the live session, but the moment that we log off, surely around 1:05 p.m., you're gonna say, what did I do? What was that? What was the name of the session? What was the lady's name? And you have all of that information gathered for you. Because again, we don't have those lovely diligent, we have some lovely diligent students, but imagine that, for example, you have the South Park kids in your class and they're just gonna play along. That's all they wanna do is play along. And Zoom is the perfect environment for them to be such an engaged learner, because no one's also playing Candy Crush on the side and when they have their virtual backgrounds. So I'm going to go ahead and do the second feature that you will enjoy, hopefully, as a Nearpod user. I'm going to go ahead and switch slides. And you will see that whatever I do on my screen happens for your students. So you can have total control of your Nearpod presentation. And our first engagement feature that you can apply to a presentation is called a collaboration board. So this is one activity that is called pandemic teaching trick or treat. If you could describe teaching during a pandemic as a candy, what would it be? And so on your screen, you have the opportunity to use an image. You can type it in. So for example, I can click that lovely blue button and immediately do a Google search. And I'm going to go ahead and type in the all favorite black licorice on my end, because I don't really know that anybody really likes black licorice except my mother. And then once you have selected your candy, you can use, again, text or image and hit post. You will see that it pops up and hopefully populates on your screen. So if you will go ahead and take a moment and put in your response, I'll give you a second or two to do that. So again, a candy that would describe teaching during the pandemic. Thank you. I have Whoppers. Perfect. And you will also notice that there are those little hearts, because again, Nearpod is also building off of a lot of the popular trends in social media. So you can go ahead and click a heart and it will like your responses. So just give you a couple more seconds to do your post. So I've put a text response in so you can see that Sour Patch Kids. Sometimes they're sour, but it's sweet. I love the commercial for that. So this is a really easy way to collaborate. And as a teacher, I can see who are providing the individual post. But for you as a student, you will notice that the responses are coming up anonymous. So that way it gives some autonomy. So for your shy students who want to engage, this still allows them the opportunity to do so. Even those cool students that have the answer, but they just don't want to let everyone else in the classroom know that they are equal contributors. Nearpod does offer some of those autonomies so that you can actually just reference a response, like someone put Skittles. Again, we have Whoppers, Sour Patch Kids, Pops, candies. We have those things coming up, but I know who's responding. And again, on the participation side, you're getting credit in terms of engagement from Nearpod's statistics by being involved in these various activities. So that's a really simple icebreaker that we have there that we can use. So that's one tool. All right. Now in the presentation, I provided you with a PowerPoint presentation in advance because Nearpod is really big on making sure that you have clear objectives for what your students will be. So here's just a sample objective slide, and I actually sent a separate PowerPoint template to you so that you can actually create this for yourself. But I basically want to know from the knowledge, what will students understand? What are the kind of things you want them to take away from your lesson each week? What is the skill? And again, this may or may not apply, but as we think about SACs or your accrediting boards and things like that, if there's a competency that's related to your course, what is that particular skill that you want them to have within the lesson? And then ironically enough, because maybe it's the teacher in me, that what is that social emotional learning objective that you may have? What do you want them to appreciate, or how do you want them to feel about the content or the experience as they make connections between your course and the workforce, or your course and the other experiences that they're going to have from week to week or within a program? So again, you may use all of these things or some of these things, but Nearpod encourages you to use at least one. And most people tend to go directly for the skill objective, but making sure that the student understands in the learning experience what it is they're going to take away. So that's something that's pretty familiar. What is not familiar and is the pacing guide. Let me reassure you, this session is not going to take 90 minutes. I have a 3-hour class on a Friday of all things. And so I am very clear to have a Pacing guide for graduate students on a Friday that meets at 5:30 when we know that they're coming home from work. They have children at home. They are wanting to prepare dinner and just wind down from the week. So the pacing guide helps them to stay engaged mentally because we tend to think of face-to-face engagement. We know we have them in our respective classrooms. They look up and they're going to fake it to make it for the time that they have you. And they're going to smile and nod. But for some of you with your virtual backgrounds, I don't know what's going on behind you. And I don't know if you're watching Wendy Williams or CNN, or maybe you're getting caught up on, WandaVision. Personally, I have a 3-year-old who I am hoping does not bomb my session today, but life is happening. So a pacing guide keeps them mentally engaged so they don't go offline. So we're going to do some exploring, or we're going to learn, demonstrate, apply, reflect. We're going to what am I going to do, and how does that set the stage for how I want to engage my students from beginning to end? And so again, in that PowerPoint presentation, you have those 2 slides that you can manipulate and use within your lesson. And I will say, for junior faculty, if I have any on the call, this is a really great way to make sure that you've covered a lot of those must-need areas when you're documenting teaching when you're being observed. So those are 2 tools I've already provided for you, and you can, again, use them how you feel. So what else does Nearpod basically allow us to do? So in 9 minutes, I'm going to go through some of the features that Nearpod allows, so that way we can take off the student hat and allow you to see how I create a Nearpod lesson and how you can do it on your end as well. So I basically am going to use one of my lessons from last week to facilitate some of their features. Again, Nearpod is all about creating dynamic learning environments. So as I'm going through my online experiences, I want my students to see that I'm still in control, that the pandemic, while it may have caused me some gray hairs and some chipped nails, I can still do it even though I'm not in a face-to-face setting. So of course we're going to have course readings. So because they don't think you need to buy a textbook. I mean, why? So I am just going to access maybe content using maybe open education resources, or maybe you have access to your digital textbook or some digital resources online. So that's exactly what I did. For my course, I use Wikibooks as one of my resources. So we actually take them to the online readings that they're responsible for. On your end, you can actually activate the links in real time. So if we're talking about why is engagement important on your own device, you can go through the various topics separate from what I'm seeing on my screen. So now I can have my students go into breakout rooms. I can have them look at topics individually on their own during breaks, but I don't want to take out the literacy aspect of my direct instruction time. If I want them to read content, I'm just going to maybe put a timer on and allow them the opportunity to look at a topic, and then we come back in and check in. So you still have access in Nearpod to embed links and take them to external sources to read and review information, just like you would if you were showing this in a face-to-face classroom. The next Nearpod feature, you have the ability to create your own slide. So this is a slide that I created in Nearpod to talk about Bloom's taxonomy. But the cool thing about it is I set the stage by looking at the original document, and then we did a compare and contrast activity by, again, taking them to an external source. And now they have the ability, and you should have the ability on your screen to look at the updated Bloom's taxonomy. So now we're kind of doing some analysis and comparing and having some just general dialogue of what was higher order thinking skills pre-internet, and how can we build on that now? So it still gives you the opportunity to bring in multiple sources to really utilize both traditional Nearpod slides or your PowerPoint content slides, and then build on it by going to an external source. But we can do more. So again, we have a content slide, and now we can do videos. And I really pulled from the things that I think faculty are interested the most in when they're trying to pull in all of these tools into one source. So yes, you can watch a video in Nearpod. And the nice thing about it is if it's a YouTube or a Vimeo, or if it's a content that you've already uploaded, not only can you watch the video, but as a faculty member, I can push that video out to you. We could all watch it and on at the same time, but I'm going to give you the access to watch it on your own. And what you will see is that not only do you have a video, but you also have 2 activities that you will create that you will complete within the video. So on your screen, if you will hit play on your screen and go ahead and complete the 2 activities over this TEDx presentation, which will take you about 30 to 35 seconds. Okay, so for the sake of time, hopefully you have, sorry, I paused the recording. Let me go back and resume recording. Okay. So hopefully you had the opportunity to see how that particular video works. So in that video, I basically uploaded a TEDx presentation. And in that, I put in a open-ended question. This is to ensure that the students are watching the videos because we use eLearn and we're dumping in video. We have all these great experiences that we're wanting them to see and hopefully engage with away from the class session. This will allow me to make sure that the students are actually watching the video because I intentionally put in that first video. The first question was an open-ended, what do you know about TEDx presentations? And then the second one was basically at that particular point in the video, if you're happy and you know it, what does the speaker ask you to do? So you can do open-ended questions or a quiz while they're having a video. And then on the teacher end, what you see on my screen is the fact that I actually have a record of who is engaging on that content. So I have answers here that I can actually pull from. So again, if it's a student-paced exercise, now everyone's like looking like, oh, good, you can see it. If it's a student-paced exercise, or even if it's a live lesson, I actually have a means to capture the student's engagement. And I should say that when I'm saying student paced, this is if I send out a Nearpod lesson before the class actually starts or afterwards. If I have a student that's absent, I can send them my Nearpod lesson beforehand, and they can still participate in all of the activities and things from their tablet, desktop, or their phone, from the Nearpod app on their phone. So I have a way to do it that way. I'm going to show you in a moment another way to utilize a video, but I know that faculty members are always asking about polls. Do we have clickers? How can I engage my students using polls? Nearpod again allows you to drop and develop polls directly into your lesson. So on your screen, you should see a very controversial poll, but one that is timely. Should college students be required to show proof of the COVID vaccine to return to on-campus classes in the fall? Now, because this is being recorded, I didn't say what fall. So if you would respond, and you will notice on my screen, again, the answers are coming in real time. And the really nice thing about that is I don't have to, with some of the other poll features, you have to send a text message here or do something. All of this is happening in real time within the Nearpod lesson. And the cool thing is, as a teacher, I can share those analytics right back to the class so that we know that 100% of you said at some point in a fall, we need to have them to have their vaccine. Because if you're like me, I don't even qualify to get one yet, but I'm waiting. So that's a really great way to have that activity. So we can show videos, we can have collaboration, we can also do polls. What else can Nearpod do? Well, we can do matching pairs. And again, I don't know everyone's content area or your needs, but I'm going to go ahead and start this activity. And we're going to do a matching pair for the Georges. And I set the minute timer for 1 minute. So I'm going to see if you can match up all of the Georges and see how current you are with pop culture or old culture. And again, when you're finished, please make sure that you hit submit so that your answers are locked in. All right. So I already had a timer. If for certain Nearpod engagement activities, you can set a timer. So if you have a quiz or certain activities and you want to make sure that they just don't like go make a turkey while you're doing an activity, that kind of ensures that you do stay on time. So according to my screen, Dr. Dixon won. She did it. She knows all of her Georges. Good job. But in case you are not sure and you weren't clear on, I know a lot of our students don't know who George Jetson is. That lets me know that I am tapping out as a Gen Xer. But we have all of the Georges on here, including Georgia O'Keeffe. I had a student that said, that's not fair. You didn't have any women Georges on there, but I found one. But so you have a matching pair. You can do this with definitions as just like a pre-test experience. So another great way or cute feature that your students can use, or that you can prepare for your students in Nearpod. In addition to that, quizzes, because of course, why not make sure that they're retaining the content that you've designed for them in the class? So I have a sample quiz, and you will notice something unique about this quiz that you may not be able to do in eLearn and some of the other portals. So I'll see if you can figure it out in a moment, but you have a 2-question quiz to complete. And again, make sure that you hit next to move to the next screen, to the next question, and then submit to post your answer. I'll give you 30 more seconds because there are a couple of things that you may or may not have noticed about this particular quiz that is different from a lot of other platforms. All right. So the first thing that you may have not have noticed is that for question 1, there was a video at the top right-hand corner of the screen. And so unlike other quiz or assessment features, In Nearpod, you have the ability to post a supporting image, video, or embed audio into or record audio for each question. So let's think if you're a foreign language instructor and you really want your students to translate a certain passage, you can actually record that and have that in your and let your students play that audio and respond back to it. The other cool thing about it is that really helps to support content. So maybe if you have multiple sections of the same course, you don't want to use the same video every single time, but it can reinforce a concept that you've taught within the class. Um, and also, a new feature that Nearpod that has added is that students can also record a response back. I didn't have it set up for this one for the sake of time, but again, if you're a foreign language instructor or a communications professor, maybe you want them to actually respond and provide a audio response. Students have the ability to do that within Nearpod. The other cool thing is, as an educator, I can see your answers on my screen in real time. So I know immediately if I need to go back and reteach something in that actual session. So the rule of thumb for Nearpod is I use this kind of as micro indicators. These are not used for major quizzes, major exams that I would do in eLearn. These are serving as content assessments that are content formative assessments that I can just follow through in real time just to see if students are getting it and are ready to apply those competencies in larger assignments. But if I need to, because this is the other cool feature, as a student, you can see your answers. I can push back your grade to you. So once students realize this, one, they are truly, if you do pop quizzes or things like that, they definitely are, typically it increases their engagement and I would definitely say retention, but they're also like, everyone done, so I need to see my grade. I need to know my grade now. So they're always ready to see their grade, and they really enjoy that feature to kind of know in that moment how they're doing versus to wait until a separate time after the learning experience. And a few more, and then we're gonna flip it and we're gonna start creating. Um, so this last part, what I typically do in my lessons is the reflection part. And we commonly know this in a face-to-face setting as, just kind of a chat out, a check-in type of a system. In the online environment, it typically is moved to a discussion board. I can do that by creating an open-ended question, but Nearpod also works with Flipgrid. So I can actually have a video discussion where my students can go in and just do a video check-in. And so I have just a sample Flipgrid where I have students saying hello, and you can see it's just kind of me posting over and over again. But that's a really nice way for the students to just go in and record and say, now, what did you think? Thinking about that social emotional learning objective, tell me how you feel about what you've learned this week. And that was oftentimes their checkout. They can do it really easy, again, with their webcam on. Flipgrid also has its own app, so they can do that on their phone and on the go, because I know that right now students want to feel like we care that life is happening in their homes. So these are some of the more common popular features that Nearpod offers based off of what a lot of faculty members are typically doing and we're doing pre-pandemic. There are some others, but I wanted to pause here, take questions, and then I'm gonna remove you from this session and we're gonna talk about the development end. So with the features that I've shown you thus far, are there any questions about how the students interface, or just any takeaways that you have at this particular point?
I have a quick question.
Absolutely.
So if we are using Nearpod in a synchronous learning class right now on Zoom, does it typically require students to have two devices, one to be on Zoom and the other one to interact with Nearpod?
It's often better that way because it's sometimes what they're seeing. Sometimes they're in eLearn and sometimes they're on the same screen. What I typically do, and I'm going to actually turn my virtual background off for a moment so you can see how I navigate this in real time. What I typically do as the instructor is I will log into Nearpod from my iPad. So this will be my teacher platform so I can control the slides off screen. What I have displayed on the screen is the student interface. And so that way I don't want the students to know if they're responding to a quiz. I don't want them to see how people are, scoring or responding. So I would typically look over to my separate device and I can see those comments. But then on my face-to-face screen, if a student doesn't have two devices, they see what a student would see. So it's all clear for them. So typically I recommend the instructor to have the two devices for ease of use. But the students typically, they will just go from, once they activate the Nearpod link from within eLearn, it just comes up on the screen. And again, I'm more concerned for my purposes, I'm more concerned about who's engaged in the content, not who's logged on into Zoom, because I have found that they may be on Zoom, but like I said, whatever else is going on, I'm not always monitoring, 15 or 20 Zoom rectangles. And if they're on the page too, they really, I mean, they don't know, but they really win because, it's just too much for us to navigate. And so if I see that they're in, and on my screen right now, I have 5 green dots, I'm typically happy. And then I have those engagement features to make sure, and my students have figured it out. I can't walk away from my computer because I don't know when she's going to put up a slide that's going to require me to do something. And the moment that dot goes red, then she knows, they don't know, but I know on my end, like, oh, Josh isn't paying attention anymore. Okay, cool. And that also affects their participation percentage. So I have that analytics of saying, hey, I noticed that around the 6 o'clock mark, your percentage tends to, it's not that accurate, but I can just tell by certain times in my own pacing guide that are typically around when I take my first break, engagement sometimes shifts. And I've had a student say that's typically when the time that my child comes home, and then I'm just trying to get them situated. And that's kind of why I miss those activities. So yeah, but great question. Okay, so I'm going to kick you out of my session. And then we're going to talk about the actual development part. And this is going to be really fun for the recording purposes. But I first want to take you over to the report. So in your dashboard, if you've logged in to your TSU account, you probably have a blank dashboard, which is totally okay. But you will notice that I've created folders because the cool thing about this, if you were to use this and we have more compadres along the line or further along to use this, you can actually create folders for your Nearpod lessons by course. But obviously, if you have a department that has a high number of adjuncts, typically you may have a faculty member that serves as a lead professor, and you design Nearpod lessons with core content slides for just to make sure there's consistency. You shoot that to those adjunct faculty saying, you can't touch these slides, add whatever else you need. But we definitely need to make sure that, 15 sections of art appreciation, we definitely need to make sure they're coming out with these core competencies so that you still have academic freedom, but we still know that we have program consistency from one class to the next. But those reports, so we've ended our lesson and immediately I have my report off of what you were doing. So when we're talking about grade appeals and we want to make sure that we can do some just quick on the spot analysis, I get everything that you've done right there. And we've only been out of the session for maybe 2 minutes. So I know how Alexis performed. She had a really good session, but we need to work on that matching pair activity. So I can go ahead and say, you need to study your Georges. You need to, you need to know your Georges. But I can look across the line and say, wow, this is where individuals were participating. And then I can get a gauge of what engagement pieces worked well or students are struggling with. Maybe students really love the video multiple choice, but a regular video, they just zonk out. So I need to do more videos with the questions embedded. And then you will see across the board that participation. So Alexis, while you may have struggled in that matching pair, you were with me the entire time. You hung in there and you stayed in there. But even me, I got 83% on them because I didn't do the matching pairs, but my percentage dropped down. So that's where you're having conversations. And it's not a true tool, but it does serve as a useful metrics to say, hey, I want to make sure that at least throughout a class session, you are staying at the 80% participation rate and above, because you may have to go to the bathroom and things like that. But if I see a student that's coming in with a 40%, they're in class. And again, they get attendance for being in the class. They logged in, but are they really logged in? And are they really participating the way that you need to? And what would that look like in a face-to-face thing? That would basically be, maybe be the student that's in class, but they're asleep. That's what we kind of want to gauge. So if you are creating a Nearpod lesson, first and foremost, you have a resource. I volunteer to serve as a resource. Do not panic. You can do this because Nearpod is based off PowerPoint presentations. You're there. You got it. You're already there. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to create. And we're going to go to lessons. So top left or right area, sorry, of your screen, it's going to be in your account, create, and then you're going to go to lessons. And immediately the first thing that I do is I go ahead and I upload my existing PowerPoint presentation. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, I don't know why anybody would start off with a new tool, creating a whole new car when there's clearly a model ready to go. So I'm going to go to my desktop and hopefully, where did I put you? My Nearpod presentation, my Nearpod demo lesson. So I'm going to go ahead and upload my PowerPoint presentation and I'm going to let it do its magic. So that's the first part. We want you to go ahead and create your content in PowerPoint, get all of your core content, image development and things designed. And then I think I felt like, did you have a question? Yeah, I saw your hand up, but I didn't. Go ahead.
Is it limited on how many slides? Like if your PowerPoint slide that you're uploading is 53 slides, will it, like I noticed the example one that you had in the email, you told us to make sure we had one. So I've used Nearpod before, so I uploaded one. It's 53 slides. It only uploaded 20 of them. So is there a limit?
I was going to show you here so that it does have a size capacity there. So what I tend to do is I try to figure out how I'm going to pace my lessons. Like what is that core content and what I will do. And here's going to be the sneak feature to that. And I'm glad you brought that up. In that event, I may go ahead and do a slideshow. Instead of individual slides, I may go ahead and do a slide deck. So I will go through and I will take a larger presentation. And let's say I have, and I've seen this, and you'll be surprised. I've taken 100 slide PowerPoint presentation and worked it all in. We'll divide them into themes. So maybe this first part of the presentation is focused on, maybe it's biology and it's the respiratory system. We're going to lock all of those. We're going to we're going to cut that presentation. We're going to copy it like 4 different times. And we're going to put all of the respiratory slides as a slideshow, upload it. And then all they see is that one slide, but there are 15 slides on that slide in that slideshow. So it kind of condenses a little bit, but but the students, what they count are rectangles. They're like, oh my God. But that's a little bit better way to kind of keep things organized. Especially if you don't get through all 53 slides, you want to make sure that you have a stopping point in their notes that we stopped at slide 53. If I ever have, or we stopped at slide 4. If we have to relaunch the presentation, I can go back into slide 5 and they can take their notes from there. So that's the trick behind that one. So I've uploaded my presentation and so we've already covered what happens if you don't meet that size quota. So once I have my content in, as a faculty member, you are 90% finished with what Nearpod wants you to do. You've uploaded your content, so you're good. At this particular point, all you're doing are adding the slides that you want to use to promote engagement. So I can add a slide here. And I have 2 choices. I can add content, which could be a video, that slide deck. A lot of teachers outside of education are not familiar with vocabulary videos. They also have Nearpod 3D. So maybe I want to do an animal cell if I'm in biology. I can go ahead and drop that in and it will just put it where it needs to go. Let's just say here, I would like to add in for math, a graphing calculator. I'm sorry, I'm gonna say this for the recording. I can't give a good example for a graphing calculator. I did my credits, and that's why I became a teacher and I stopped at 4th grade. I don't have any more to give you after. But if you need a graphing calculator, I don't even know what a tangent is, but this looks pretty. We're gonna do a canyon jump. I don't know why, but I'm gonna put it in there. So if you're watching this and you're in math, shoot me an email and tell me how this would apply some way. For dentistry and for our dental hygienists, they really like the, no, I'm sorry, it's under activities. Add slide, activities. They really enjoy the draw it feature. The draw it feature allows you to do, it's kind of like an interactive whiteboard. So they can actually upload an image of an x-ray of teeth. And then they can have their students. Let me go ahead and show what that looks like. So I'm going to find x-ray of teeth. And I also love the fact that Nearpod works with Google. So a lot of the things that I would need are already in this huge repository. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. And this might be a nice informal assessment. So I would want the students to go in and analyze what those terms are. So I want you to go in, use your draw features, annotate, and tell me how you would diagnose this particular injury in red. So they would have that particular feature, and I can also zoom in if I need to or zoom out. But basically the drawed activity allows the student to annotate and draw and do labeling and things on their device. So that's so I'm going to drop that in there. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I know we're at 12:50, but what I wanted you the opportunity just to see is how I create my Nearpod lessons. And again, I design my lessons. And again, I feel like I'm going to take a broad leap and say that I don't know a faculty member in 2021 that doesn't have at least one PowerPoint presentation or keynote. So typically it's like, what am I going to have to do? Upload your PowerPoint presentation. Make sure it fits. And if it fits, then basically you're adding in all of those different engagement features strategically to maybe do formative or informal or formative or summative assessments, to just kind of do a check-in if I want to add a video, because I definitely wanted to show you that. If I wanted to add in a video, here we go. It was going to give me three choices. I can upload a YouTube video, which is where a lot of us were going anyway. I can have a video that I've already created. Sometimes I do Zoom recordings, or now TSU has Panopto, so you can upload those videos in there. Or if you already have some previously designed videos, but I'm going to go ahead and show you. And type in TSU. Here was that Honors College video that I selected in our demo. And what I have the ability to do is I can have the students just watch the video as it's designed, as I may normally do, or I can go in at various places in the video and I can add an activity, and I can choose between the open-ended or multiple choice. And that would ensure, what I have found, that ensures that the students watch the video to the end. But let's just go ahead and be real. A student is not going to watch an hour video. So you also have the ability to trim it. So I only want them to watch this particular segment of the honors convocation. I can take the whole video and I can shorten it to what I absolutely need. And then I can still embed in my activities. So you have that feature there. So I'm going to go ahead and save that and save my trim. So my now hour video has now been condensed down to 14 minutes, and then I can place it where I want to. And then of course you have those nice features where you can move it along in your slide deck. If you are just being a real messy planner, like I know I'm gonna need all of this, and I can cook my chicken and still come back and organize all of my things later. When you are done, go ahead and put demo 1. What the students will see, or what you would do to actually launch your Nearpod lesson, is as simple as clicking live participation. So when you click live participation, it will push out the Nearpod code that they need to have for that day. And what I will typically do is in eLearn, I will post this link I will create a link in eLearn for that week, and I will send that out. So that way, when they go into the eLearn portal and they're going into Zoom to activate the class, they can also activate the Nearpod lesson right there. So it comes up as a separate tab. So they have the Zoom screen for the course, and then they have the Nearpod lesson right there. And I don't even have to worry about the 5-digit or the access code. The other thing is, let me close this out, is the fact that I wanted to show you, are you sure? Yes, I want to end. The student pace part. For the student pace lesson, these are for students that I timed it perfectly. Here she comes. That I timed it for these are for students who need the activity maybe separate. So if you have students who have had an emergency in the spring, we were doing really good, and the tornado happened. So I had a lot of students in my area, it impacted my area, that lost power for several weeks. And so they had to do a lot of things as a student paced lesson. And I could set that time frame. It automatically does it for basically 29 days. But if you want to extend it for students that may have had an incomplete, I can extend it as pretty much as far as I need to. So I can have a student that can work on this particular lesson for 140 days. Take that information and then put in, because oftentimes eLearn, especially if they're getting it incomplete, you have to remember to contact the smart. Hold on, hon. You have to remember to contact Dr. CA or that division to get access to the portal. But this way I can still have the off. Come here. Come on. We were doing so well. I timed it, but I didn't time for a 3-year-old. Mommy. Okay. So what other questions do you have?
Hey, Mommy.
As we prepare to conclude.
Mommy.
There's nothing like a kid timer.
Hey, Mommy.
Hi.
Mommy.
Can you say hi to all the participants that are?
Hi.
Yeah. Okay.
Mommy.
Great. Yes. Go get them. You go get the strawberries.
And more strawberries.
More strawberries.
More strawberries. More strawberries.
So other questions or thoughts that I didn't cover? Because it's Friday and you can only do this for an hour? Okay, so at this point, what I am going to do